And we're back, and with us is a couple of Colorado State House reporters. We're going to talk about the upcoming legislative session from the AP. Jim Anderson, how are you, sir?
Very good. How are you?
Good. And of course, Peter Marcus with ColoradoPolitics.com, that new news outlet, which is a subsidiary of the Colorado Springs Gazette.
Yeah,
correct?
Under the umbrella of the Gazette, but really trying to be a standalone one-stop for political news. And by the way, a pleasure to be speaking with you instead of John. John, hope you're warm out there. So.
Well, thank you. And I was going to say that I know that both you guys have been on the show before, and so I know you're both used to being the best-looking guys at the table. So sorry about today. But, all right. Legislative session starts up when? 10th, right?
Wednesday.
Next
the
Wednesday.
11th.
The Wednesday, the 11th.
Yep.
You guys are going to have nothing to do, nothing to write about, so you might as well just go ahead and take a break because nothing big is going to happen. Am I wrong?
Actually, all jokes aside, the first 2 weeks of the session are pretty kind of lame where bills are first being introduced. But they're gearing up. It's looking like the big centerpiece issue that hopefully both Republicans and Democrats can rally around is going to be transportation funding. Budgetary issues in general. There's a good $600 million right now that they have to trim off of the budget. So Republicans and Democrats are going to have to come together. We heard them speak this morning before business interests, before the chamber. And there was a lot of talk about how Republicans and Democrats can work together. You know, we've never heard that before at the beginning of a session. But yeah, they're in their kumbaya moment or hopeful kumbaya moment right now. And
that won't last long.
Well, exactly. But the thing is, this is the year because you know it's after the most divisive election we've seen in a long time. It's ahead of the midterm because next legislative session is going to be already gearing up for the midterm. So this is their year with new leadership in the legislature and kind of some of the political undertones, you know, a little bit in the distance that if they want to, they can get it done this year.
Yeah.
And agree, the legislature split. Republicans have the Senate, yes. Democrats have the House. So
it's
the big
split.
Story will be, of course, the long bill, the budget. But anything else going to be?
But with transportation, you're getting this from both. You have new leaders in both the Democratic-controlled House and Republican-controlled Senate, and they both are really in a tone that we did not quite see last year, saying we want to make progress and we're definitely going to have to fix the roads problem, which is, as Peter mentioned, $9 billion and growing. And there's no funding mechanism for the roads. And most of the projects on CDOT's wish list concern the Front Range, but we'll see, you know, if something were to pass. We're talking about a bonding initiative in which we, you know, or the legislature would, in one scenario, ask the voters possibly for a sales tax diversion, slight increase in the state gasoline tax, which hasn't been touched in a couple of decades, to help fund. It'd be roughly about $3.5 billion, and with a repayment cost of roughly $5 billion over 20 years. But it is a priority, and we're hearing positive signals from both sides on that. Long bill. That is part of it.
That'll be the.
As Peter noted, we're looking at a $600 million deficit. There'll be a lot of, you know, maneuvering, a lot of talk, a lot of disagreement on how to go about it, but they'll get it done.
Well, they always get it done because they have to get it done because we have a balanced budget requirement in the state. Thank goodness we have a balanced budget requirement in the state.
It will.
But interestingly enough, we're talking about a $600 million deficit, yet the budget's going to be bigger this year than it was last year, like it was the year before. And the budget keeps growing, yet we always hear that there's a deficit.
Part of that deficit is what would be under the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. They're calling it a deficit, but roughly $250 million is projected to be refunded if we don't touch anything.
And I'm looking forward to getting my check.
You shouldn't look too strong.
Well, Patrick, to your point about how the budget is bigger this year, you know, than last year and continues to grow, Patrick Neville, the the new House Minority Leader, is very well aware of that.
I'm sure he is.
And, you know, when Democrats are talking about, you know, potential reforms to Tabor, which, by the way, the Tabor reform talk is not just a Democratic talking point anymore. There's 2 Republicans who are going to be working on that this year, trying to tie Tabor reform to personal income, or excuse me, the Tabor formula, the cap, you know, to personal income rather than, you know, inflation plus population change. So this is, you know, the conversation changed a little bit, but the Republicans are very well aware of the growth of the budget, and that's going to be a point for them this year that, yeah, yes, we do need these services and we are making these cuts, but are cuts really so bad, you know? So
no, not necessarily, actually. Exactly. Transportation funding, that's the big story.
Yeah.
Because new Senate President Kevin Grantham has already said that the other potential big legislative debate is dead in the water, which would be the enterprising the hospital provider fee, which is about $800 million a year.
Yeah, you know, I think you'll hear even House Speaker Crisanta Duran is aware that the hospital provider fee is a dead issue. So that's not, you know, I think Senator Lucia Guzman, the Senate Minority Leader, is probably going to work on something, and I'm sure you'll hear the governor's office talking about how this is still a good idea. Realistically, not going anywhere, dead in the Senate. So we're talking about these alternative ideas that we've been mentioning. You know, the bottom line, and the bottom line is that they're going to have to come together on issues and make compromises, and even side issues. One of the other things is going to be construction defect reform, which failed last year. They seem to feel like they can get it done this year. Republicans and Democrats have been really talking actively about this, as they have about the transportation funding. So, you know, while the hospital provider fee might be a dead issue, there are these other issues that they at least seem hopeful that they can come together on.
Actually, this construction defects is a big story because it's been brought up over the last several sessions.
Absolutely.
With bipartisan support. Democrats supporting this, Republicans supporting this at a statewide level, gets killed every year.
It does.
And so cities have started taking up construction defects on their own. They don't want to wait for the city. And what we're talking about here, just to remind the viewers, is that condominiums are a great way for people to start off with a starter home or for their first home. They're generally less expensive. No one wants to build them in this state because of the potential legal liability.
Absolutely. And when you have a growing population, up to 10,000 people, new residents per month, we do have a severe crunch there. Now, Democrats also will not abandon their commitment to affordable housing in addition to construction defects reform. And they're working on various proposals. We're going to see that here. Whether the GOP will go along, we don't know. But that is a separate issue from basically condo development. It will not take away the problem here.
No, it won't. But I think this is one of those interesting things that you see. The incrementalism is how things really happen. This gets introduced. It gets introduced. There's bipartisan support. You find out who's opposed to it, and it gets introduced. You find out who's opposed to this part of it. It keeps getting, and eventually it's going to pass. There's no construction defects will pass eventually.
They feel like this is the year for it. And to legislature's defense, it wasn't exactly their fault last year. They couldn't even get a bill introduced because in the very last days, the two sides, which was essentially the mayors and the home builders who want the reform, and then the other side is these homeowner association interests, they just went at it, and the talks just deteriorated, and people started hating each other, and it just wasn't going anywhere. That's the real question, is whether that can deteriorate as well this year. If the lawmakers can kind of be the adults in the room and get everybody to, maybe calm down a little bit and talk about some legitimate compromises, then you might actually see it this year.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk about what the actual coverage. Reporters are going to be covering the Capitol during this legislative session. So the Associated Press, of course, is going to be there.
Yes.
Right. And there's you and how many?
Kristen Wyatt.
So two reporters covering the Capitol?
And we'll call others in whose expertise is
as you need different expertise.
Absolutely. Peter and Joey Bunch are doing over at coloradopolitics.com is great. It's really intense. You've got that going on.
And both of you guys will be at the Capitol, so you'll be working out of Denver for.
Yeah, exactly. So Joey and I and Joey Bunch,
Yeah.
who came from the Denver Post over to the Gazette and ColoradoPolitics.com, we're going to be sort of the State House team this year. We'll both be down there, and you'll see some of the familiar Denver Business Journal, Grand Junction Sentinel.
Denver Post hired a guy to replace Joey Bunch, so there'll be two State
Yep.
House reporters
Yep,
for the
John
Post down
Frank
there.
and their new hire will be down there. So
Fascinating. It almost seems like the number of outlets covering the Capitol shrinks, but the number of reporters there's still a fair amount. So we'll become a group of reporters covering it, and then other outlets around the state picking up your work. Is that going to be? So you'll be like a mini AP yourself over at Colorado
a little bit.
Politics,
But
taking money out of your pocket.
For instance,
What are you trying to get us to fight?
well, you'll have Charles Ashby coming back, of course, the dean.
Yeah.
All right. You've got public radio, KUNC.
Right.
You got CPR, massive distribution there.
Yep. All right.
And you got outlets like Chalkbeat.
All right.
which are doing
Chalkbeat. Yeah, great outfit. Okay, we're out of time, guys. Hey, thanks for coming by. Good luck this session. See you next week.